Mr. Albert Engel of Ada, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Engel, in your story, we had gotten you into France, and you were with the 19th Tactical Command, and there was a point when you had to serve as a defense counsel in some court-martials. So can you tell us how that happened and what you did?
Well, there was always a need. 19th Tactical Air Command was the equivalent of an Army division, and they had my papers. Although I was directly assigned and responsible to 9th Air Force personnel. It was an unusual arrangement. Little outfits. We had 33 of them in the 9th Air Force. And anyway, I hadn't gotten to law school yet. And so nonetheless, I got assigned as defense counsel for a few unhappy people arising out of landing at the beach. And I didn't know a thing. So what do I can think of? There were Judge Advocate General officers with the 19th Tactical Air Command. So I went to see them. Well, there were two of them, and they were amused. One was Robert Wagner Jr. Wagner's father had been the famous United States Senator, I may still have been at that time, author of the Wagner Labor Act. And I recognized that name right off the bat. And he was a sharp guy. He was later mayor of New York. So I said, well, here, I've got this assignment. I don't know a diddly about this. So they thought that would be fun. So they gave me the manual for court-martial and told me what to do, and I read it and learned what all the objections were and so forth. And came on for trial, and the officers in the court-martial itself were themselves didn't know what they were doing. So I was the only one who really had any chance, and I must have impressed them because they agreed with everything I said. The guy, the first case I tried was a kid named Houston, who was charged with drunken disorderly and swearing at an officer and being just generally a snot-nosed. And he came in late at night, and he'd been out drinking. So the prosecuting attorney was a guy who didn't have any more experience than I did, and even less reason, I suppose. So I just went by the book, such as it was, and I had the court-martial intimidated, I guess, although I was 19 at the time, and the thing was, he came in from being in town, some French town right near the port, and good and drunk, and in an apple orchard. So he came in and went to bed, but he didn't go to sleep. He said he kept hearing these cows eating the apples under the apple trees. And so he yelled out of his shelter half, told them to shut up. And of course, they didn't speak. This would have been French cows anyway. They wouldn't have known what to do anyway. So the fellow did not know how to frame a question, and I wasn't going to give any help. Anyway, went through the trial, and we the upshot was that they acquitted him because he didn't have any. I said, you haven't proved anything. I never got a chance to answer a question. I kept breaking in. I thought that's what lawyers are supposed to do. And they never, I got 3 acquittals. And the captain who came in there, captain of their commanding officer on there, he was infuriated. And so was the commanding general. And he published an official reprimand on the bulletin board of these guys, but he didn't touch me. Mm-hmm. I guess he understood that was my job.
So he reprimanded the men who gave you the advice?
He reprimanded the court martial, yeah. So that guy got off, and it was too bad, really. He should have got at least 60 days, but it wasn't for me to do it. Mm-hmm. And so the next case was a GI who was charged with unlawfully operating a motor vehicle, and apparently he was good friends with a lieutenant who was working in our office at that time. That time I was in an office, a traveling office. And the fellow I defended in that case told me what happened. He said, actually, I wasn't driving. Lieutenant so-and-so was driving, but he loved to drive, and officers aren't supposed to drive a Jeep. But we were good friends, so I took the. I testified that I had been driving to let the lieutenant escape. Mm-hmm. And I said, "What's he going to do?" I didn't know. He didn't know what he was going to do. And so I thought, well, this is an injustice. The lieutenant's the one who's at fault. So I interviewed the witnesses. And I knew we worked in the same office, the lieutenant. And so I didn't know what to do. He didn't want to he was very faithful to his friend, his drinking buddy, if you will. And figured he could weather that storm better than his buddy could. So while we were waiting for it to come on for trial, I went into the officers' club, and I was talking to the bartender. Of course, everybody talks, and I said, well, I told him my dilemma. I don't know. I mean, he tells me he tells me he wasn't driving. The lieutenant was driving because he liked to drive. He's the one that drove the car off the road. So I said, well, he won't let me bring that up. So I guess what's going to happen, I guess he's my client. I can't go against what he says. I don't want him to swear to something that isn't true. So I said, if he's convicted of this, I said, I'm going to have to swear out a warrant against my friend in my office, who was probably 10 years older than I was, and for having driven the car unlawfully. So if you confess this, then I'm going to take over and to do that. Well, that's the place to tell us, to testify in the bar of the officers' club, where it would get good coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So they did, and that case just amazingly disappeared. Mm-hmm. That's all I wanted. I got my job done. So that thing never came up, and I forget what the third case was.
Did you have an AWOL? AWOL?
Well, he wasn't AWOL really. He was, I guess, but they were drunk for one thing. And I just said, I don't care what they do, and I don't want them to convict this guy because he didn't do it.
Okay. All right. Now, when you were in France, you stayed in a town that was called Laval, France?
Where?
Laval?
Laval?
Yeah. What do you remember about that?
I don't.
Okay. Because in your memoir,
too many little French towns all over the place.
Okay.
And I don't remember. I remember the name.
Okay. And you stayed in a house that belonged to a countess.
I'm sorry.
You stayed with a countess, a woman.
What?
You stayed in a big house that belonged to a countess.
Oh yeah, that was the first. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. We were. I had wanted to be in the first to land in there. I got talked out of it by Captain Gutterman, who was with our office. But the colonel said he had priority. He wanted to do that, and so I had to wait for a couple of weeks before I could get over there. But I wanted, and it was pretty funny. So anyway, we were in tents then. I forget exactly all the details now, but anyway, the Germans had used that castle as an officer's quarters, and it was a pretty worn-out old place anyway. But she was a nice-looking lady, and so she said she wanted to see me. So I went up to see her. She was on the second floor on one wing. They let her have one wing of the castle for her private quarters. Let everything else could be would be used for occupied officers for facilities. So I forget whether she spoke French or whether I did. I could speak, I could speak kitchen French, about it. So anyway, she said that she had the Germans had come in and taken away her castle. It was a big place. There was a French castle. It wasn't really a castle. It was a French home, country home. It was pretty big. She said that she was getting it back. She was getting back her property, and she had been the patroness of a young unmarried mothers group, which they cared for mothers, and that was what that was that was what that convent was for, to take care of wayward girls. I don't know how you can tell one from apart from the other, but anyway, but they couldn't get back in there because there were bombs and ammunition all over the place. They've been shooting in there, left a lot of junk all over it. Would I go ahead and get that stuff out of there? So I said, sure. I did quite a bit of that, and it really led to a lot of different interesting situations. And so I took Norris, was our tech sergeant. He and I said, well, I sound just like 20 millimeter. It was nothing really. Mm-hmm. And I took Norris. He was my top non-com. So we drove. We took a Jeep and a truck, I think, and we drove over to the castle. And but the convent was in town. So they had some of the sisters were there, and they had started up the kitchen anyway, but they couldn't accommodate the unwed mothers because they didn't want them. No, they were terrified of that ammunition. That's all it was. So they were an order of Catholic nuns who wore great big hats, bands. They looked like, all of them looked like Engel but about 25 years too late. Anyway, so we brought along our own meal, our food. We had K rations because we knew they had nothing to eat, and so we went there, and they had mother, or whatever they call them, and we picked up all the ammunition there was, and they were very grateful. They served us some wine and bread, and we shared our K rations. And they couldn't speak a word of English. Usually nuns will be pretty well educated, but these were country nuns. And so anyway, we picked up and cleaned up the place for them, and then we all sat around in the kitchen having lunch. So Doris and I opened up our K rations, and they thought that was absolutely wonderful. and but they didn't know what it did. They couldn't speak English. So we opened up. I don't know if you know or not, but those K rations are in a wax covered box. So we got that open, and then we opened up. When we passed it all the way around, all the various things. There was some kind of a beef, canned beef that you could open up. I forget what all was in there now, and I don't really want to remember it particularly. But anyway, as we did, we passed it around like that. And at the there was also a candy bar in there. Chocolate. We understood that. And then, so I went around the table in the kitchen, and they would talk. They got to the very bottom was a piece of a toilet paper. Mm-hmm. So they talked about it, and they would take a look at this stuff, and then they would pass it on to the next nun. and so when they came to that, they couldn't figure out what that was. Well, it was obviously we knew what it was. But anyway, they wonder what that's for. They go, we. So they were nice, and we got them taken care of. We did quite a bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was possible for us to do it. And it was a little bit dull anyway.
Okay. Now, how did you get to go back to your bomb squad?
What's that?
How did you get from the 19th TAC back to the 80th Bomb Squad?
Yeah, well, I didn't get back to my own. I got a new one. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't have anything to do. I was ammunition officer, ammunition bomb disposal officer for 19th Tactical Air Command, whatever hell that was. And my boss was Colonel Walter Simon, a Jewish guy, really neat guy. He had been employed as a civilian in San Francisco for the city of San Francisco, and he was good. He was very, and he'd already been in North Africa, and he'd been gathered together with, so they were taking care of ordnance would include all fighting equipment, and I was they assigned me to 19th Tactical Air Command, and I liked him. He was really a really straight officer, and so I don't really know how I got back, but I know I got to know the colonel. He's lieutenant colonel actually, and I said I told him my sad story about politics. I don't know if I already covered that or not.
You covered that already.
There was a lot of nonsense there, and so I think maybe for one thing they were running short of officers, and they had a commanding officer was short when the previous one of the 80th Bomb Disposal Corps went out and got drunk, and came back one too many times drunk, and they were fed up with it. They did a very courageous thing. They packed him in the Jeep and took him to headquarters and said, "Here he is, we don't want him." That left a shortage. So they decided they would. I had been asking to do this. I put in for a change immediately when I got there. So they said, well, they were having I got reassigned, and I think Colonel Simon helped me. I got along real well with him. I just was very unhappy with politics, and I didn't know what anything to do with headquarters. So they said, well, they found me a command, 80th Bomb Disposal Squad. The one that I had commanded before, brought overseas, was the 86th.
Okay.
For what it's worth, there were a lot of them around. So they were sending somebody over to get me in to take over. So at the designated, he arrived, Captain Walter V. Smith, T5 Walter T. Smith, the driver. He was from Mount Ida, Arkansas, and he picked me up at night, at dark. So we drove to the new location, and I don't remember where that was now. Was that where Laval came in?
That could be.
It might have been. I don't remember.
Well, it's in your memoirs, so we'll look it up. Oh, I can look it up.
So Smitty was 30 34 years old, so he was about 14 years older than I was. Was a real hillbilly, but he was smart. And we had a good chance to talk driving in the dark. So they brought me back, and of course all the guys that were in that oath, the 80th, were wondering what I was going to be like. That's a favorite occupation for all enlisted people who have a change in command. Anyway, we got along just fine, so Smitty told the guys in the squad. He says, "They want to know what happened." She says, "Well, I think he's going to be all right." So I was with them for a year, or more than a year, and I didn't know how lucky I was, because it was just an excellent squad. The guys were different. They had a technical sergeant that was Norris, who was a redheaded Irishman from New Jersey, on the New York side of New Jersey, and he was a little wild but good. And so I was with them, and I stayed with them until the war was over. We changed. We moved a lot as we were a tactical air command, so but we were following the troops and taking care of the air support, mm-hmm. and keeping the keeping the airspace free of bombs, mm-hmm. And it was A40 was the name of one of the places. That was in France. We went to Montdidier, so I don't know whether it was Laval or whether it was Montdidier. It was in northern France.
Right. Right.
And so we took over, and they had a lot of, the French had been there ahead of us. And they left a mess. They didn't know what the hell they were doing, and it was really a mess. So we went and cleaned it up. Just picked it up and got rid of it. We blew it up, exploded it, we set it off, and got things in shape. And and we lived in the country. It was very difficult because the French are not dainty. They were leaving crap all over the place. They didn't know what they were doing. So anyway, I stayed with them. We followed our way all the way east. Then I can't remember really what. Montdidier was a town. It had a mayor who thought he was something else. We set up we cleaned up that bombing site, demolition site.
Now, were these German munitions you were cleaning?
I'm sorry?
Was this German material you were cleaning up?
What?
Were they German bombs and ammunition?
Well, yes, all right, yeah. There was a lot of German, a lot of French, American bombs. Some of them just deteriorated. That had been the largest. That had been the largest airport in France. Hmm. It was a huge place. The Germans had used that as their principal base for attacking England So they just had awful lot. We couldn't do it all. It was just too much. So we did what we could and kept out of trouble. And we had a lot of interesting things happen along the way. I forget what I come.
Right. Well, I'd like to go back to when you were first working in France and in Belgium. Were you working on American airfields, or getting unexploded bombs, or working with airplanes?
Well, no, we were clearing, we were serving at the airfields, but there was we had runway duty. So if a plane came in, it wouldn't drop us, bombs get stuck in there, clamps, and so and then a lot of the bombs were no good. They were just general debris of war, and we moved on eastward. I think she'll be back with another one.
Oh, that's yours right there. All right.
Sure you don't want any?
No. All right.
It's so hard, you know. Of course, it's been 50 years.
Yeah. More than that. All right.
So, I don't know how much you know about World War II, but a lot of the troops were in reserve for later plans, and that included General Patton and his Third Army, and that was the mission of that was the fighting mission of the 19th Tactical Air Command. There was the 9th Air Command, and then the 29th and the 39th, and we were then, and but it was just it was a huge base, and so we had, well, bombs came to us in many different ways. That we didn't have, actually, none of us had a lot of unexploded bombs that were dropped. We were as likely to find American bombs as anybody else because we bombed it so heavily. And so we would. They also had ordnance department was inspecting bomb loads, and there was a lot of live ammunition. The Germans had tremendous stores of bombs, and that was quite an interesting collection of things, of all kinds of ordnance. And so they said, "We'll get this out of the way of the general's way," or whatever. Which we did. We went. We commandeered some land in Montdidier itself. That was. I was working. We had to have. It was very difficult because the farms were so crowded. So 10 acres isn't enough to do anything in, and we had to remove them and put them in a bomb site. And which the rule was that you demolish the bombs. It was one sure way to make them safe. And they went through, and they were constantly checking out the conditions of the ammunition that they'd been left out there on the countryside, and there was no end to the amount of that stuff. We just couldn't possibly get rid of all of them. So we had to take those which posed the biggest threat and dispose of them by blowing it. We would do it by starting off. We would find a place that was clear enough so it wouldn't endanger anybody. And then we start off, we'd lose, say, a small bomb, maybe a 50 kg bomb or something like that. And it would dig a hole. Then we put 75-pound bomb till we finally had, we got some, I think we had some help from a engineering company to help us move it because we only had 6 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so we demolished that, and that was funny. We were right in the French countryside, and they did not like it. And the mayor of Montdidier claimed that we had done all the damage, and probably we had, but I don't know. That was war, and so we did what we could. We were kept busy, and but most of it was French, was German ammunition
Right.
there in Montdidier, and Norris and I sort of handled the demolition work, and the guys, they were good at it.
Now, before that, Montdidier was after the war was over.
What?
You were in Montdidier after the war was over.
No.
In your memoir, yes.
Huh?
Yeah, you came to
I came back.
Yeah, you came back to France.
Yeah, I came.
But before that, you were in Belgium for a while.
I was busy for a long time.
Yeah.
We moved. Do you have a copy of my?
Yes.
Maybe you have a better memory than I have.
But you were in a mining town in Belgium for a while.
Yes, I was. Zwartberg, I guess it was. Yeah, that was. We were there the longest. We were there for almost 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had. They had. This happened. That would be December. Everybody said. All the historians said that we were. The German offensive was a surprise. It was no surprise at all. We knew. And I received a telegram from headquarters saying that we would expect, that this was expected. So I got this telex or something saying that we were to move from France to Belgium to I forget the name of the town. Schwarzberg probably and there was already one bombing disposal squad there, and it come the other way. So we packed up and a lot of things, little things happened that I can't place in the right perspective. But we did mostly demolition work. And at that time there was such an immense amount of ammunition to be blown up. I said, we can't possibly do this. So we had to take the worst stuff, get rid of it, and get it out of the way. And which we did. And the boys, they were really good. We had a tech sergeant, a buck sergeant, and four T5 technicians, 5th class. Mm-hmm. And they worked hard. They did a lot.
Now, was it dangerous?
Huh?
Was the bomb disposal, was that dangerous?
Well, people did get blown up. Yeah, it was. If you if you blew something up or if it went up when you didn't expect it, it was dangerous. I went by the book. And I have a predecessor in my position, the 80th, he was originally, he wasn't the guy that got in trouble. He was reassigned to other duties to coordinate things. And did you read the book? Did we read the Captains of Bomb Disposal?
I mean, I read your memoir.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Well, 80th, his son, who was after the war, wrote a book. It's still in publication, I think, about our outfit, but I was not in it because his experience was with his father. We did a lot of living. We left France. He came east through Luxembourg and headed north. And we were heading the German offensive had just then started. And we had about 500 miles to travel. And so we took all our stuff and we moved as best we could eastward till we started running out into Germans. But it was interesting. Christmas was coming on. I think we started on about the 18th of December, about that time, and we're heading east and north into Belgium. And we came to this, they called it the Ardennes Forest. We were going through there, and we got lost a little bit. There was one little town we went through called Bastogne. And we didn't see anybody there except a drunk GI. We tried to find out information where he was, and he wasn't worth a damn. He didn't know where he was. But we kept going. We stayed with an infantry outfit one night. And we took rations and quarters with them. We were only 7 of us, so no problem. They took good care of us. And we headed, and we got to the British sector. The British had command of, and so, but the Americans had air bases, which they shared with the RAF.
Right.
So that was where the action started then. And there were 2 air bases. There was a British air base of Hawker
Hurricanes? Yeah, that was, or typhoons? Hawker typhoons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were there, and an American air base. So we got to the American air base, and then Zwartberg was a mining town. It was a really nice mining town, by the way. It was a company town, very well cared for. And so we finally got located. So there already was a bomb disposal squad that'd been there. Jim Jaques, his outfit. And so I shared duties with him, and then we worked things out to do things. But also Jim, I think Jim had to have hemorrhoid surgery. Anyway, so but anyway, we went to this town that was halfway between the RAF base and the American base. And meantime, of course, the snows became colder, and we walked into this. We were there. The British tank had part of a British tank division was in there, but we checked it again. Norris found us good accommodations, and we liked that. And that was in the British sector, and so we had an apartment in that town, and we were there for 6 months.
Now, how did the Belgian people treat you?
Wonderfully. They were absolutely wonderful. Anything we wanted, they got us. They really were. They really did. The local superintendent of schools sort of took us under wing. They were really curious about everything we did,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And he knew I played the piano, so he got us a piano. I forget all the different things they did for us, and we reciprocated. Mm-hmm. So in that time, then we lived there, and so we had gone through the Bulge before they got there, and we'd expected it. Mm-hmm. And we settled in Schwartzburg, I guess it was. I hope.
Yeah, that's right.
And Christmas was coming, so the forest. There's a lot of woods, timber, and we took turns on this runway, what I call runway duty, and we were also had a telephone, so if they needed something, the British needed something, we were available there to them, and we got to where we were going to our apartment before Christmas. And we had a Christmas tree, and we set it up, and we decorated it with the tinfoil that had been dropped from our bombers, mostly the B-24s,
right,
had dropped to use the radar. And so we were getting acquainted. We were still, we've been there for a couple of months, I guess. So we had a bunch of school teachers on the other part of that building. And if you think they were pretty young things, they weren't. They couldn't speak English. And they were country girls. They weren't much. And we exchanged food, so we occasionally had cakes and pies, and they got whatever we could scrounge. And he was really good at that, Norris.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, and we were there at the time. I didn't know it at the time. 20 years later, a very good friend of mine were talking about our experience. It turned out that he was stationed just feet away from where I had been. But so many things happened in that period of time and in that place. The Germans really had been beaten. They were. I seemed to be. I think probably my notes reflect that I agreed with General Eisenhower. Good thing for him. He saw the Ardennes offensive as being a great opportunity, which it was. You got to fight them somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were the Germans had moved back a number of miles.
Mm-hmm.
So we but not before. I think at the time, one thing I was going to suggest before this, with the great volume of ammunition we had, was I was going to suggest that about the only thing we could do is get an engineering company and get a railroad and take them by railroad to the North Sea,
Mm-hmm.
which was to the north of us, and dump them in the North Sea. To me, it made sense. We couldn't begin to handle that volume, and I got clearance. I got clearance to do it, except not the headquarters. He said no, you can't do that. So we didn't. But I had heard a year later, when the war was over, they did just that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we really had quite a good time,
Yeah.
and the guys. Well, a lot of the guys, we were pretty comfortable, and there was several rooms in the apartment or the house. It was a detached house, and the Germans had moved behind us sort of and come back in, and we got paid nightly visits from their Air Force, Luftwaffe,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't have any pilot. The kids, they were so depleted that they just couldn't. It was run by boys.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't even know how to fly, and so we stayed there. We prowled the whole area. We went to, and they finally moved forward. And on New Year's Eve, the Germans made their last offensive, aerial offensives, and it was a pretty poor show. And I stayed on the base that time because I thought I should be closer. And we shared duties there and the RAF. But so so many little things happened in there. they bombed us that night. The Germans, the British had a tank reserve right up close to the front.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Jim Jacques was in the hospital then. I guess that's because I know I stayed that night on New Year's Eve and New Year's morning at the air base,
Mm-hmm.
the American air base, and fortunately we were ready. There were, oh golly, there were close to 100 planes in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And they came in early in the morning, but Americans had already been flying,
Mm-hmm.
and it was carnage. There were, I forget how many there were, but anyway, we shot down, our plane shot down, I think 36 German planes.
Did the Germans use any jet fighters?
Anyway,
Jets?
jet? No. No. They had Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulf,
Yeah.
things like. And we got pretty well. They came in the night beforehand, so we were moving in and out of our tents and the foxholes we had right by the tents.
Mm-hmm.
And they were coming in and shooting up the runway and getting out of there. And it was muddy. So we trying to remember. Yeah, I was in our tent. We had our tent up,
Mm-hmm.
and we divided it up. We had 12 of us all told. Six one, six the other, and they came in. The Germans came in and tried to shoot up the planes. There was we were right on the runways, and so you're bound to see it when in the daytime. There was a flying fortress which had been downed. It had been shot down, really, so it landed and didn't crash.
Yeah.
And it was out there in the field, and they just plastered the daylights out of that. But nobody was in it.
Mm-hmm.
It was, that was more. Go ahead.
Now, were a lot of the German bombs duds?
What?
Did a lot of the German bombs not explode?
Were there a lot of bombs?
Unexploded bombs.
Well, not a lot. They mostly shot up the place.
Mm-hmm.
They did. It was interesting. The next morning was when the main attack occurred,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they got 36 or 40 German planes down right in front of our eyes. That was something. and so we stayed where we were, and but we stayed available at our troops.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning, then there were planes strewn all over, and they were German. They're nearly all German.
Mm-hmm.
So and we were bombed. I think we were bombed a couple of nights before too. And later on the next morning, it was over with. Maybe it took about an hour or two, and they came in low, and I swore one of the planes was a captured. What was the fast
Mustang? Mustang or a Spitfire? A captured British or American plane? You said a captured plane.
Yeah, they came on down the runway about 15 feet off the runway. And I got my feet wet, but that was just about it. It was, and the night they bombed our Schwarzmeer too. They were, of course, they were really good targets because they were in the tank bombing. They were bombing the tanks.
Okay. All right. Talking about New Year's Day, 1945.
Before then, on Christmas Eve, they attacked us too.
Mm-hmm.
And we got bombed, and they did some damage. They really messed us up a bit. It was a city.
Mm-hmm.
A small city. So they bombed our front yard, and didn't hurt anybody. But I remember they bombed. They dropped bombs on the street ahead of us. But the Belgians cleaned that up. They were very much. They really were neat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess we knew they were coming on New Year's Eve. And nobody got hurt. But on New Year's Day, I received a phone call that one of the German planes had gone in, crashed in outside of town. I said, well, I can't handle that now. I've got to be where I am. And most of the others had been pretty well shot down by that time. Really. So afterward, I drove in the Jeep with one of the guys to where they said it was. And we got to the point where they said it was out. It was out in the country. But it had gone off. And the plane had crashed, and had body parts all over the place. And that was too bad. And we got along with the neighbors very, very, very well. And life went on.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can say.
Now, was there a particular Belgian family that you
Oh,
became
well,
friends
yes. Later, I don't know, a week or so later, I guess that would be, we got a call saying that someone had dropped some ammunition, and when I pick it up, I said, yeah, I know where it is, and it was a German, I think it was probably German potato mashers,
Mm-hmm.
and other things. So I got in my Jeep and drove out to where it was, and I was picking up. It was okay. It was safe. Somebody in headquarters said this Belgian running along, hanging with his finger through the hook. Not exactly the way to do it. Anyway, while I was doing that, along comes this guy, about my age, which had been, 18, 19. And he stopped, and I talked to him. He was odd dressing, odd clothes. He was not regular in uniform at all. He was whatever you could get. And I got talking to him, and so we got talking, and he was wearing a pair of German officers' boots, black, and it was so interesting. And what is he doing here? Well, he was going back to visit his own grave. And so we got talking, and I said, "Well, it's getting late now, and I don't." He said, "I think I'll take you up there tomorrow." So about 30, 40 minutes, about miles away. This was in Limburg province.
Mm-hmm.
So the next morning, I picked him up, and we drove to this Clocheval. That was the name of the big estate, which means beautiful valley.
Mm-hmm.
And we drove up there into this house, modern house. Somehow I have pictures somewhere. I don't know where. If you want pictures ever, sometime I can go look them. It was a family of 6 or 7 children and a doctor and an English-speaking mother. She was probably in her 40s and 50s, probably early 50s. So I drove Harry up that, and it sounded so interesting, so we did. And then we came back to there for New Year's Eve. Right? Not for New Year's Eve. I can't remember. Anyway, they had too many daughters, and they all spoke English. And I think they were all looking for husbands. And their father was making damn certain they weren't going to find them. And they were, the mother was English. She was an English citizen. And it turned out that they had been, they had been housing German officers in their house and also in a small castle that they had on the ground. They had several hundred acres of land, and the doctor had his offices in the house. And they were delighted to see us, and they were thrilled to see Harry.
Now, who was Harry?
Huh?
Who was Harry?
Harry?
Yeah, who was he?
He was, I think he was a bombardier on a Lancaster bomber that got shot down.
Mm-hmm.
And when Harry got up there, the Germans thought he was killed with the rest of them. So they divided up the body parts into 6 or 7 different places. They were very good. What's the German? Goering.
Mm-hmm.
Goering took very good care of American flyers
Mm-hmm.
because he wanted his own taken care of. And so we went up there, and then I don't know if I stayed there that night or not. But when he left, then he continued on his way from there. It was right near. It was very close to the Dutch border, mm-hmm. And the modern house. And they had built it for, and then there was the castle. Apparently, her father owned the castle. It was a castle that was very pretty, but it was not a real ancient one, I don't think. And so anyway, I hit it off with the family real well. And the English mother told me that they were under investigation, but he was continuing. He was non-combat, and he was. The Madame Brunin was his name. He was her father was British, mm-hmm. But he was caught with his property in Ceylon. So he was down in Ceylon, and they hadn't heard from him since the war started. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, a girl down the street on Lowell Street was with the OSS, and Jean Davidson, and I said, well, I'll put you in touch, and I did. So later, I wrote her. She had an APO, Army Post Office address, and I wasn't the girl I dated. Right. But the family, I knew the family. I just went down the street. So, she got word, and I passed the letter on the exchange using the APO system, mm-hmm. to get back together. And I got this letter out. It was pretty funny. I guess her father was a real son of a bitch. she and a girlfriend they were stationed in Kandy, which is the name of the town, and that's now Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And so she took bicycles, and his farm or plantation was on top of a mountain, and they didn't get to the top of that mountain. She had some trouble. The elephants were in the way, and it was sounded kind of exotic. And anyway, they got to the house, and they knocked on the door. And she said she'd been pushed off the road by these elephants. They use them for work animals, I guess. And so she had gotten herself dirtied up pretty much with mud and stuff, and so she didn't look very much like an American, I guess. But we knew her well. I knew who she was. She had her sister, and we had driven them to at University of Maryland when we were there, and anyway, we passed the time. Apparently they got in there around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and so when they knocked on the door, the butler who came to the door, they were rich, and he said, well, they couldn't, they didn't receive guests until such and such time in the afternoon. British through and through.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, 3 years, what the hell? And I did get to do a tour of that house too. He apparently, Mrs. Good's father liked to hunt, and he had when he could, and his furniture was all carved bone, a lot of trophies hanging. It was very interesting. Anyway, they got in touch, and that endeared them to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I became very, very good friends with the family. I can't quite remember how that worked. Anyway, we maintained a friendship, and 3 or 4 years later, when I was in law school back in the States, I took $1,000 that I had saved. I didn't have much time off, so I took $1,000, and I had for 300 of that 1,000 I used to get my round trip, boat trip. I was going to back see what I missed.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a guy from University of California, and he was on the ship. It was an old tired, troop ship. So I was
So did you go back to see them?
Yes, we did. It was quite a lot of rejoicing. I never heard from Harry again after that, but I guess they did.
Mm-hmm.
But we were there for 3 or 4 days. They thought we were going to stay a week. When you traveled over there, if you were upper class, you didn't move that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But we did. We were. I was in solid. They knew me, but they did not. They didn't know Bob Harrison. So we made, rather he did make some mistakes. They took us on a hike. The girls, 2 older sisters, the second and third line,
Mm-hmm.
took us out, showed us around the country, and Bob Harrison they trusted me, but they didn't trust Bob because they didn't know him. So Bob and one of the girls, we just went for a hike in the countryside, which is pretty, and the father became quite angry.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't speak any English, and he was gruff. And so we decided, well, we think we wore this out. And so we decided we better get going. And we did. And we went on up, continued our trip up into that was elsewhere. That was after the war.
Right, right. But to go back to the war again, did you get into Germany at the end of the...
I'm sorry?
Did you go to Germany at the end of the war?
Did what?
Did you go to Germany too?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah, we I forget what dates we were there, but we went to Nuremberg. Then the Germans surrender took place
Mm-hmm.
in 1940.
45.
5, I guess. And we also, while we were still in Belgium, we decided to do a little. The war was really getting over with by then.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided we'd take a look what the battlefields look like. And we drove Aachen or Aix-la-Chapelle was the name of it. It was the Aix-la-Chapelle was the name, the French
name.
to it.
Yeah.
Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we weren't too far from there, and we drove from where we were. It was not at all far, but like here to Hastings or Middleville, and we got reassigned back first, and then I lose my memory here.
Well, at the end of the war, they kept combining bomb squads together.
And what
They kept putting different bomb squads together, so you wound up commanding a bunch of different ones at the same time.
Yeah, and well, they had to demob them. The war was over, and interestingly, yeah, that we all got together in an old palace in Nuremberg, and then from there I think we went to Bad Fernbach. I think that was, and that was the following year. Yeah, I had to relap on my notes.
Right. Yeah. Now, did you have much work to do in Germany?
No, not really. For one thing, they shifted us back then to do more of the same work we had done in France.
Right.
Uh,
So you're back in France after the war.
What?
So you're back in France after the war.
Yeah. Then we went back, and then we came. So we. Oh boy. I remember we were in Nuremberg for the following Christmas. And then it was interesting. We did. People were being demobbed, but not me, because I didn't have any children, and I was too young. In 1944, boy,
Well, when you were talking about being too young, when did you become a captain?
oh yeah, all right. That was when I was in Nuremberg. I think March 21st, 1945 or 46.
In the memoir, it's 45. In the memoir, it's 45.
Oh, that would be correct. Yeah. All the other, I was so much younger than everybody else, really. So I knew I wasn't going to get home early. Mm-hmm. But all the guys were, so I had, I don't know how many bomb disposal squads I had to clean out and get all their stuff shipped home. And till finally it was my time. But I know, I think it was in Nuremberg, or was it, or Munich. I can't remember. I know I got to go to the opera. I like opera.
Mm-hmm.
So the Opera Association in Nuremberg, of course, every city had over 15,000 had an opera,
mm-hmm.
and I saw a Mozart opera, The Magic Flute, and it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
But the theater had been bombed so badly, you weren't sure it was going to stay together. It was the first time they put out an opera since the war started going bad for them. and I enjoyed it.
Now, did your father come?
What?
Did your father come out to Europe
Yes,
while you were
yes.
there?
Yes, he did. He was. The war was over, and I had gone. Yeah, we had by that time we had been shipped back to France, and so I was warned that I'd have to be ready to meet him, and so I was not knowing they were somewhere near Karachi at that time.
Mm-hmm.
They were moving all the way around the world, and so I take all my uniforms in to be dry cleaned, and then I got orders to present myself to Frankfurt, Germany, and there wasn't time for me to rescue my clothes, so I had nothing but dirty clothes to meet the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expedition Force.
So your father was going to meet Eisenhower.
I'm sorry?
Your father was going to meet with Eisenhower.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they came. Yeah, he had his committee, his subcommittee, about 8 congressmen and too many generals, and so I flew anyway from wherever it was that we were in. I don't know where. Anyway, I met him. I came to the Frankfurt airport, and I was met there by a General Begley, Begley, who was a brigadier general and whose job apparently it was to amuse me and find out what my old man was up to. He was a pretty famous person in those days. And I didn't know. Fortunately, I didn't have the slightest.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, for the next 8 days, I traveled with their 4-engine. It was the 4-engine plane with all this junk they were carrying around the world, and so we were waiting, and finally we were I remember we were out the runway in Frankfurt, and the plane didn't come, and finally the plane did come, or we thought it was, and it landed, but the nose gear broke up, and it was skidding down the runway, but it wasn't his plane. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it disabled the airport, and we were able, so we just had to wait till we could go meet him at some other airport. Mm-hmm. It was pretty crunchy because it wasn't their plane. So anyway, we got over there in time, and he landed, and for the next 6 days I went with my father, and we were in Frankfurt. We met Eisenhower in Frankfurt. And then we were there 2 or 3 days, I think. And then we flew on to Berlin, and which was great. We landed in Berlin. Oh, I forget the name of the airport.
Tempelhof.
Huh?
Tempelhof?
Tempelhof. Did you know that?
I'm a history professor. I'm supposed to know that.
Yeah. Anyway, and there was a political science professor who had been appointed the political head of the American occupation forces in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
So we were there for 3 or 4 days, and we spent an hour or 2 driving around Berlin. It was just a mess. Mm-hmm. And we ended up at the Reichskanzlei, and it was bombed. The Russians had really done a good
mm-hmm.
job. And so they took us down to Hitler's bunker, and we saw where there was still blood all over. You know, eventually they just eliminated it. Didn't want it to become
mm-hmm.
any
a shrine
sightseeing.
or yeah.
And then General Begley and I went out on the town. He was still trying to find out what my dad was doing. I didn't know. And my dad was glad to see me, I guess. But all he could talk about was our Christmas tree farm in Lake City,
Yep.
which I was supposed to go to in Long Run when he died. We had 1,500 acres, and I had obtained my captaincy by that time. But ever since I had carried a job, which for the last year or so called for a captaincy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make much fuss about it because I could hear what was coming. The congressman's son makes captain,
mm-hmm.
you know, goddamn politics. And but anyway, I guess I was proud of it, but I was embarrassed by it too. So we went to Paris, and they did what every honest congressman does when he goes through Paris. So we saw, I had been to Paris several times already in the past, starting in when I was was with the
19th TAC?
huh?
When you were still with the 19th TAC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had poor Eisenhower. He was absolutely determined. He was not going to let troops loose in Paris until the war was over. But he couldn't do a thing about it. And he got in, the Germans went so fast, the British went so fast, Americans went so fast, they already knew exactly where they were going to go, what they were going to do. It was very hard to control. Anyway, we did Paris. We went to the Folies Bergère. I had already been there. I had a good time, and I met the other members of the committee, all of whom I knew one way or the other from Washington.
Right.
And his closest friend in that plane was a congressman from South Dakota, and he later then went into the Senate. So, and then, there were other kids, there were other people, young soldiers,
right,
who were ordered to meet their fathers and do what you do when you go to Paris, I guess. And so we did, and Dad confessed to me that he'd been there during World War I. He looked a little older. Then we went to London. I was so hoping to see Churchill, but we did not.
Well, Churchill wasn't even in office anymore.
Huh?
Churchill was not in office then. He lost his job.
Yeah, I don't think Churchill may not have been. He may not have been prime minister at that time. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Now, after
they took good care of us. They stayed. They stayed in good quarters in George V Hotel in Paris, and which is a nice hotel.
Yeah.
You been there?
I know where it is. Yes.
Okay. I didn't stay there, but he did.
I didn't stay there.
So then it was over to London, and he stayed at the what's the very famous hotel in
they have a lot
Claridge's.
of okay.
Claridge's Hotel, and we were put we other hangers on were put in various places, but he was they were housed according to protocol, and they had their meetings, and they gave us a really neat gal who was an understudy in the movies. And she was a driver, a WAC, Women's Army Commission. She said, well, you meet us back here, see the town, and meantime we'll be out of here. And we were told not to bother them. So, well, they were nice. So we had lunch at Claridge's, which was nice. That's quite a place. And my dad and Buell Snyder, who was the ranking Democrat, my dad was a ranking Republican, and Buell Snyder was from congressman from Pennsylvania, and he and Buell were housed together in the suite that were normally used by the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. So we got a chance to go up and see his digs, and we had lunch there, and that was fun. And meantime there What's his name? Just thought of him the other day. Anyway, she had the car, she had the transportation, and there were, what, 3 of us guys, I guess, and they were sons or nephews of congressmen who were treated similarly. And she was smart, she was intelligent, and she was good looking too. And so she drove us around London and did more sightseeing around there until they took off, and then I came back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
But there was what's his name? Those guys, you know, congressmen's sons, people who had prestige and who were. They got treated pretty well when the military services was able to provide it if they would let them.
Mm-hmm.
We were close to that other family too, to Case, Francis Case.
Mm-hmm.
He was later to go into the Senate as Republican, and so we came. We flew back and went back to work until the next year.
Yeah.
And while I was, I forget, probably it's been so long. Anyway, we were, I received a call. An officer from 9th Air Force, or from Ordnance Department, I don't know who he was. He was pretty high rank, came to see me. I didn't like that. I didn't want anything to do with those guys. My dad had been stationed in Paris during World War I, and he was trying to find out. He says it. And he said, well, you know, you've got a choice. I said, well, the choice I have is to go home when it's my turn like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he says, if we need people to do bomb disposal work for the Ordnance Department, wherever it may be, and if you would be willing to volunteer to come with us, to stay with us, stay over, we could either probably get you a majority. My God, I was just barely 21.
Mm-hmm.
And they made me wait until I turned 21 before I would get my captaincy, even though a year earlier I was fully qualified for it. And they said, if you're not interested in doing that, we could hire you as a civilian to do the same work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what, that's a bunch of crap.
It probably paid better.
I don't know. I saved quite a bit of money.
Mm-hmm. Right. But you turned them down.
Huh?
But you turned them down.
You bet.
When did you get home?
Huh?
When did you get home?
When?
Yeah.
Well, we landed, we were in, possibly in Frankfurt. We were at Bad Soden, which is a German, do you know where that is?
Not specifically.
We were at Bad Soden, which was a resort in the resort area the mountains. And we went from there by 40 and 8 to Antwerp, where we boarded. But I'd already sent my guys back. They all qualified for one way or another.
Right.
And I was hoping to be with them. I wouldn't do it. So I came back to Top Hat. It was Camp Top Hat in Antwerp.
Okay.
And I was given the care of a bunch of tired soldiers who were anxious to come home, and I was anxious to come home, but it was no problem at all. Those guys were so well behaved. You know, they didn't want anything to interfere with her getting on that boat.
Right.
So.
And what kind of boat was it?
It was a troop ship.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot bigger than the one I got over on. And I came into Brooklyn or New Jersey, hard to tell one from the other. And it didn't take us half as long to get over there. And it was a joyous return. Landed in New York and caught the train to Washington. Congress was then in session, and so we went to our house in Washington. And my brother-in-law, my older sister's husband, was there with. They were there, and I was anxious. I couldn't wait to get out of uniform. And so my brother-in-law took me downtown to get some clothes. So I got dressed up in zoot suits. I thought that was real smart ass. So I had a girl, and I was going to take her out downtown to dinner, and she didn't want to go. She was embarrassed. And then.
Do you remember when that was?
What?
Do you remember when that was? Was that 1946 now, or still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 46. And my dad didn't want me to wear he wanted me to. I got all dressed up in my zoot suit because I thought it looked so sharp, you know. Hell, I didn't know. And I was still quite a kid, you know. And so Bob Cavanaugh, my brother-in-law, brand new. I hadn't seen him since he'd been married, I don't think. Anyway, he was an electrical aeronautic engineer. And I went down and got new clothes. And but so he wanted to take me down to the Capitol and take me to lunch at the restaurant there, which was fine. When I started to put my civilian clothes on, he, oh, why'd you wear your uniform? And he'd have me. I'd still be wearing my uniform if I'd done that.
All right. Now, so did you ever wind up running a tree farm?
What? Well, yes. Well, we landed in. What's the name of that? It wasn't Top Hat. Top Hat was the debarking.
Right.
In Antwerp.
So, in New Jersey, they had Camp
Andrews.
Hmm?
Camp Andrews?
It's possible. There's Andrews, there's Camp Kilmer, there's Camp Shanks.
Huh?
There's a lot of camps. Camp Shanks, Camp Kilmer, one of those. But anyway, one of the ones around New York.
Yeah, I was anxious. My grandmother was visiting my parents. She'd had 8 children. Real pretty lady with fine complexion. And she had my grandfather had died in the meantime. And so there was a letdown, you know. And anyway, I cracked her up. She was not given to laughing. She was much more of a Presbyterian.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we ended up one morning in our house in Wesley Heights, and she was there, and but we were bored. I finally said, "Well, Grandma, what do we do now?" She just roared. She really laughed. It was a big letdown, you know. She was a nice lady.
All right. Well, that's getting us. Now we've gotten to the end of your military career.
What?
Well, we've gotten to the end of your military career here, and the tape is almost done too.
What's that?
Well, I think we're going to close out the interview here.
Oh, okay.
Because we've gotten you, this is a veterans history interview, and so we've gotten you out of the Army now. And I'll leave it to the legal historians to catch up with your real career.
An awful lot I didn't tell.
Yep. But you do have a memoir, and that will at least be with your papers and things.
It sort of wore that out. There would be a really good story in that somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Politics was too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I finally got out of it. I loved bomb disposal.
Mm-hmm.
I loved my outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And we did lots of good, hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And matter of fact, I did take. I took an unexploded bomb out of Eisenhower's headquarters in Hoechst, which is HOECHST. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was that was an American bomb had not gone off and been been released too low, so it went down to the ground, came back up, and so I guess I was somewhere in Germany. This was some months after I met Eisenhower. Mm-hmm. When he got introduced, he said, "Well, Congressman," he said, "I didn't know you had a son over here." His son was not there, but Congressman's Case's nephew was there, and he was a real cool guy. And there was a couple of other guys. They were fine. They were not spoiled. Mm-hmm. They were in regular troops. And I was constantly aware of somebody looking over my shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was over with when I trained back the 86th Bomb Disposal Squad, and it wasn't. They were still keeping an eye on me.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I was not in the headquarters.
Right.
And I did have interesting work to do.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'd like us to close out. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
It's very, very incomplete.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you have copies of any of this stuff?
Yes.
Okay, well then I hope we...
I will use that when I prepare the file that
Yeah.
we'll create. All right.